Do you remember those forgotten Halloween recipes no one makes anymore? Mid-century kitchens buzzed with spiced cakes and bubbling punches that lit up every October night. How did those flavors vanish so quietly from our tables? Witch's brew punch bubbled like a cauldron in basements and community halls when neighbors gathered for Halloween nights filled with homemade fun. Hosts lined big enamel bowls with dry ice, so mist rolled across the table as the sweet scent of citrus and ginger filled the air. Orange sherbet slowly melted into ginger ale and pineapple juice, turning the drink a glowing amber that caught the light of carved pumpkins. Children crowded close as ladles scooped frothy cups that fizzed against their tongues, while parents added a discreet splash of spiced rum to their own mugs. The sound of laughter mixed with the hiss of the dry ice, creating an atmosphere as magical as the holiday itself. Today, bottled sodas and store-bought party mixes have replaced this showpiece, but the memory of a swirling, misty punch shared under paper bats and candlelight remains unmatched. For families who once planned the entire evening around that single glowing bowl, the disappearance of Witch's brew punch feels like the quiet fading of a neighborhood tradition that once defined Halloween gatherings. Popcorn balls with molasses once filled treat bags with a scent of toasted corn and smoky sweetness that lingered long after the night ended. Families popped huge kettles of corn over wood stoves, letting the kernels crackle and dance until every pot was overflowing. Dark molasses boiled with butter and brown sugar until it reached a sticky stage that coated each fluffy piece. Parents and children buttered their hands and shaped the warm mixture into shining spheres, wrapping them in wax paper before eager trick-or-treaters arrived. The texture balanced crisp corn with chewy, caramelized sugar, creating a candy that tasted of autumn bonfires and brisk October air. Neighbors judged a house by the size and gloss of its popcorn balls, and children compared their haul like trophies at the end of the night. Over time, prepackaged sweets and plastic-wrapped chocolates edged out these handmade treasures, leaving only stories and a faint memory of that smoky kitchen aroma when families worked side by side to make the most memorable Halloween candy. Caramel-dipped apples rolled in nuts brought the spirit of the fairground into home kitchens each October. Crisp orchard apples were skewered on sturdy sticks and plunged into copper pots of bubbling caramel cooked until it reached a perfect golden gloss. While still warm, the coated apples were rolled in crushed peanuts or pecans, their rich aroma filling the room as caramel cooled into a glassy shell. Children watched eagerly as the nuts clung to the sticky surface, promising a crunch that echoed through candlelit porches and laughter-filled backyards. Biting through the sweet coating to the tart apple beneath was the taste of autumn itself, a perfect balance of sugar and orchard freshness. Neighbors traded baskets of these shiny treats, and visiting families carried them home wrapped in wax paper tied with twine. Today, individually wrapped candy has replaced the sight of those homemade delights, but the memory of caramel dripping from a freshly dipped apple remains a beloved echo of simpler Halloweens filled with sticky fingers and the scent of toasted nuts and wood smoke. Black walnut fudge squares once offered a dense, bittersweet bite that perfectly matched the deepening nights of late October. Gatherers collected black walnuts from forest floors, cracking the stubborn shells to release the rich, earthy kernels inside. Melted chocolate and sugar simmered together with cream until smooth. Then, the walnuts were folded in to give the fudge a distinct woodsy character. Each square cooled to a glossy finish, its dark flavor balanced by the nut's natural sharpness. Guests at Halloween parties reached for the platter again and again, drawn by the intoxicating scent and the satisfying chew. This treat reflected the season's darker side, a candy that matched the flicker of jack-o'-lanterns and the crunch of fallen leaves underfoot. As store-bought confections grew common, the labor of shelling black walnuts discouraged many cooks, and the recipe quietly disappeared from most family collections. Those who once savored the earthy sweetness still recall the quiet crack of shells and the aroma of chocolate as a highlight of autumn gatherings that celebrated the bounty of wild trees. Pumpkin chiffon pie brought a touch of elegance to rustic Halloween tables with its light, airy texture that seemed almost too delicate for the season. Cooks folded spiced pumpkin puree into whipped egg whites and soft peaks of cream, creating a filling as smooth as a cloud. Poured into a buttery graham cracker crust, the pie chilled until firm yet soft enough to melt on the tongue. Cinnamon and nutmeg perfumed every slice, mingling with the faint sweetness of roasted pumpkin. Families served it after neighborhood trick-or-treating, the cool, creamy texture a gentle contrast to the crisp autumn night. Guests admired its sophisticated appearance, a graceful cousin to heavier pumpkin pies found at Thanksgiving feasts. Over time, convenience desserts replaced the careful folding and patient chilling this pie required, and the recipe faded from regular rotation. Those who remember its subtle spice and feather-light bite speak of it as a lost classic, a dessert that captured the magic of October evenings and the promise of harvest celebrations. Molasses taffy. Pull turned Halloween night into an event of sticky laughter and shared effort. Families boiled molasses, butter, and sugar until the mixture reached a glossy amber stage, then poured it onto buttered marble slabs to cool just enough for handling. Children and parents greased their hands and stretched the warm candy into long ropes, pulling and folding until it lightened to a golden sheen and developed a delightful chew. The kitchen filled with the scent of caramel and smoke as everyone worked together, laughing at the strands that clung to fingers and elbows. Once cut into bite-sized pieces and wrapped in wax paper, the taffy offered a sweet reward that carried the flavor of dark sugar and wood fires. This ritual was as much about companionship as candy, a moment when neighbors and relatives joined in simple fun. As mass-produced sweets replaced handmade treats, the taffy pull faded, leaving behind only family stories of warm kitchens and the unforgettable snap of freshly stretched molasses candy on a cool Halloween night. Candied orange peel strips once turned ordinary citrus into a sparkling holiday treasure. Homemakers carefully peeled oranges, slicing the rinds into long strips and boiling them to remove bitterness before simmering them again in a thick sugar syrup until translucent. Rolled in fine sugar and left to dry, each strip glistened like amber in the lamplight. The candy carried a bright, slightly tart flavor that cut through the heavier sweets of the season, offering a taste both refreshing and festive. Packed in tins or small paper bags, the candied peel was shared with neighbors and brought to school parties where children marveled at the jewel-like treats. The process required patience and a steady hand, and as store-bought confections grew easier to buy, fewer families maintained the tradition. Yet those who once helped stir the bubbling syrup still recall the scent of citrus and the satisfaction of transforming simple fruit into something magical, a sweet memory of Halloween tables, sparkling with homemade delights and the cheerful glow of candlelit windows. Prune and spice cake filled chilly October kitchens with the warm scent of cloves, cinnamon, and nutmeg. Dried prunes were chopped and folded into a moist batter of brown sugar and butter, adding natural sweetness and tender texture. Once baked, the cake cooled just enough to frost with orange-tinted icing shaped into cheerful jack-o'-lantern faces, a playful nod to the holiday. The dense crumb paired perfectly with mugs of hot cider as families gathered after a long evening of trick-or-treating. Its deep flavors suited the season, rich and comforting without being overly sweet. Friends exchanged slices wrapped in wax paper, and children loved the friendly pumpkin decorations almost as much as the cake itself. Over time, the humble prune fell out of fashion, and the cake quietly disappeared from many cookbooks, replaced by trendier desserts. Those who remember its spiced aroma speak of cozy kitchens and flickering lanterns, a reminder that Halloween once celebrated homemade warmth as much as spooky thrills and sugary abundance from the corner store. Candy corn fudge bars captured the playful spirit of Halloween with their bold stripes of orange, yellow, and creamy white. Home cooks layered vanilla fudge tinted with natural dyes, carefully smoothing each level before the next was poured. When chilled and sliced, every square looked like the famous candy but tasted richer and smoother, offering a buttery sweetness without the waxy bite. Children admired the bright colors, and adults appreciated the silky texture that melted on the tongue. Served on platters beside carved pumpkins, the bars became a cheerful centerpiece that signaled the height of the season. Making them required time and steady attention, from boiling sugar to precise coloring, and over the years, the convenience of factory-made candy eclipsed the homemade version. Still, those who once stirred the fragrant fudge recall the quiet excitement of seeing those vivid layers revealed, a small but magical reward for an afternoon of patient work and a symbol of how creativity once defined the holiday kitchen. Apple cider donuts warmed chilly Halloween nights with the aroma of spiced orchards and wood smoke. Farmers pressed fresh apples into golden cider, which bakers mixed into a cake-style dough flavored with cinnamon and nutmeg. Rings of dough dropped into sizzling oil, rising to the surface with a hiss as they puffed and browned. Rolled in a thick coat of cinnamon sugar, each donut carried the sweet tang of autumn apples and the comforting warmth of freshly ground spice. Neighbors lined up at church socials and barn parties to enjoy them still hot, holding paper bags that quickly filled with fragrant steam. The combination of crisp outside and tender center made them irresistible, especially when paired with mugs of warm cider. Over time, commercial bakeries offered easier treats, and the tradition of frying donuts at home faded. Yet the memory of those sugar-coated rings remains a powerful taste of Halloween past, when families gathered by lantern light to share simple pleasures and the first breath of cold night air. Baked pumpkin pudding brought the garden straight to the Halloween table by turning small pumpkins into edible bowls of creamy custard. Cooks carefully hollowed each pumpkin, scraping out seeds and strands until only the firm shell remained. A mixture of fresh cream, eggs, brown sugar, and fragrant spices was poured inside and baked slowly until the filling set into a silky pudding. As the oven worked its magic, the natural sweetness of the pumpkin mingled with cinnamon and nutmeg, releasing an aroma that wrapped the kitchen in warmth. Guests cracked through the tender pumpkin flesh with their spoons, tasting both the custard and the soft-baked shell in every bite. This dessert offered beauty and substance, a centerpiece glowing with candlelight on chilly October nights. Today, the patience required to prepare individual pumpkins has left this dish behind, but its memory remains a symbol of harvest season hospitality and the quiet pleasure of sharing something both nourishing and enchanting when friends and neighbors gathered to celebrate the long autumn evening together. Burnt sugar caramel custard once graced Halloween tables as a sophisticated finale to lively neighborhood feasts. Granulated sugar was carefully melted in a heavy pan until it reached a deep mahogany color, releasing a fragrance of smoke and toffee. The caramel lined small ceramic cups before a smooth custard of milk, eggs, and vanilla was gently poured in. Baked in a water bath until barely set, each cup emerged with a glossy layer of dark caramel that slid gracefully over the silky custard when inverted. The contrast of bitter sweetness and creamy texture offered an elegance rare for the rustic season, delighting adults who sought refinement amid the playful chaos of costumes and lanterns. Children watched the dramatic unmolding with wide eyes, fascinated by the golden sauce that pooled around each serving. As convenience desserts and boxed mixes took over, the careful art of making this delicate treat faded, leaving only the memory of a dessert that combined kitchen skill with the quiet magic of flickering Halloween candlelight and warm family gatherings. Witch hat cookies transformed simple pantry staples into whimsical charms perfect for a Halloween night. Home bakers spread rounds of sugar cookie dough onto well-greased sheets and baked them until pale gold. Once cooled, each cookie served as a brim for a pointed chocolate wafer cone dipped in melted dark chocolate and set upright in the center. A ring of colored icing disguised the seam, creating the look of a classic witch's hat, complete with a shiny band. Children loved decorating them with sprinkles and tiny candy stars, while parents admired the clever illusion. Served alongside mugs of hot cider, these playful cookies turned any table into a stage for spooky delight. Their slight crunch and rich chocolate scent filled the room as laughter echoed through candlelit kitchens. Over time, store-bought candy took the spotlight, and the tradition of carefully assembling these edible hats waned, but those who remember them recall the joy of creativity and the sweet reward of a dessert that captured the very image of Halloween fun. Popcorn brittle with peanuts offered a satisfying crunch that combined the warmth of a kitchen with the excitement of October nights. Cooks popped fresh corn until the air filled with its buttery aroma, then stirred in roasted peanuts for a nutty richness. A bubbling syrup of sugar, butter, and a hint of vanilla was poured over the mixture and quickly spread onto greased pans, hardening into a golden sheet that snapped beneath the bite. Every piece delivered sweet caramel flavor with a salty peanut finish, making it a favorite for parties and porchside gatherings after trick-or-treating. Children competed to break off the largest shards while parents wrapped chunks in wax paper to share with neighbors. The sound of the brittle cracking echoed like dry autumn leaves, adding to the festive atmosphere. As ready-made candies grew more common and easier to buy, this homemade treat gradually disappeared. Yet the memory of that perfect blend of warm syrup and roasted peanuts remains a timeless reminder of how simple ingredients once defined Halloween indulgence. Pumpkin icebox cake brought a cool surprise to the holiday table, especially in kitchens warmed by busy ovens. Layers of crisp ginger snap cookies were stacked with a creamy filling of whipped cream and spiced pumpkin puree, each layer softening overnight in the chill of an old refrigerator or icebox. By the next evening, the cookies mellowed into a tender cake-like texture, while the pumpkin filling infused them with sweet autumn spice. Families unveiled the dessert to delighted guests who marveled at its elegance despite the effort-free preparation. The first slice revealed neat stripes of orange and brown, a striking contrast against candlelight and paper bats hanging from the ceiling. Its cold, silky bite refreshed guests after long hours of costume parades and games around roaring fires. Over time, the recipe lost ground to quicker packaged puddings and store-bought pies, but those who remember it speak fondly of the quiet thrill that came from revealing a dessert created by nothing more than patience, spice, and the slow magic of a cool night. Spiced apple butter sandwiches offered a simple yet deeply flavorful snack that warmed chilly autumn evenings. Tart apples simmered for hours with brown sugar, cinnamon, and cloves until they transformed into a thick, dark spread with a fragrance that filled the entire house. Generous spoonfuls were layered between slices of buttered bread and toasted on cast-iron griddles until the crust turned golden and the filling bubbled at the edges. The result was a sandwich that combined the comforting sweetness of apples with the gentle heat of spice, perfect for children returning from a chilly night of trick-or-treating. Neighbors wrapped these sandwiches in paper and passed them around at fall fairs, where their aroma drifted through cool night air like an invitation to gather. Though apple butter remains available in jars today, the tradition of hand-making the spread and turning it into toasted Halloween treats has faded. Memories linger of sticky fingers, warm bread, and the happy silence that followed the first satisfying bite of this once-beloved seasonal snack. Maple sugar popcorn clusters carried the unmistakable flavor of northern forests straight into Halloween festivities. Pure maple syrup boiled with a touch of butter until it reached the soft crack stage, filling the kitchen with a scent of wood smoke and caramel. Freshly popped corn was poured into the hot syrup, each kernel coated in a glossy amber sheen. When cooled and shaped into small clusters, the popcorn offered a delicate crunch with a deep sweetness unique to maple sugar. Families in Vermont and across New England often packed these treats in small paper sacks for children attending barn dances or nighttime hay rides. The natural richness of the syrup balanced the lightness of the popcorn, creating a snack that tasted of autumn leaves and crisp mountain air. As processed candies became common, the patient art of boiling maple sap for holiday treats faded from daily life. Those who once gathered around the bubbling pot recall the pleasure of sharing a snack that linked the harvest of forest trees to the playful spirit of Halloween. Jack-o'-lantern stuffed peppers turned a savory dinner into a playful Halloween centerpiece. Bright orange bell peppers were carefully carved with eyes and crooked smiles, echoing the classic pumpkin lanterns that glowed on porch steps. The peppers were filled with a hearty mixture of rice, onions, herbs, and sometimes ground meat, then baked until tender while the carved faces softened and glistened in the oven light. As the aroma of roasted vegetables filled the room, Families admired the cheerful expressions glowing behind the oven glass. Served hot, each pepper offered a satisfying balance of sweet flesh and savory filling, making it both decoration and meal. Children loved seeing their dinner smile back at them, and adults appreciated the clever blend of festivity and nourishment. Over time, packaged Halloween foods and candy-centered meals pushed aside such creative main dishes, leaving only fond memories of nights when dinner itself joined the celebration and the table flickered with the friendly faces of edible lanterns. Honey-roasted pumpkin seeds made the most of every carving night by turning discarded seeds into a crunchy, sweet snack. After scooping seeds from freshly cut pumpkins, families washed and dried them before tossing them with warm honey and a sprinkle of salt. Spread across baking sheets, the seeds roasted until golden and fragrant, their sweet glaze caramelizing into a crisp coating. The kitchen filled with the comforting scent of toasted honey as children waited impatiently for the first warm handful. Each bite balanced natural sweetness with a gentle salty edge, a reward for the messy work of carving jack-o'-lanterns. These seeds were often packed in small paper bags for sharing during neighborhood gatherings or enjoyed beside a fire while stories of ghosts and goblins were told. As store-bought snacks gained popularity, the tradition of roasting seeds at home quietly declined. But those who remember it can still recall the sound of seeds crackling in the oven and the taste of autumn distilled into a simple homemade treat. Candy apple red velvet cake offered a dramatic centerpiece worthy of the season's most theatrical night. Deep crimson layers of moist chocolate cake were stacked and frosted with cream cheese icing before being crowned with a glossy candy apple glaze that hardened into a ruby shell. The finished cake gleamed under candlelight like a jewel, its vivid color echoing the playful eeriness of Halloween. Cutting through the crisp glaze released a soft crumb scented with cocoa and vanilla, delighting guests with both texture and spectacle. Bakers often displayed the cake on dark platters, surrounded by small gourds or black candles, creating a striking table presentation that impressed even the most seasoned partygoers. Though red velvet remains popular, the extra step of boiling sugar for the shimmering glaze eventually discouraged many home cooks. The memory of that bold dessert lives on as a symbol of creativity and celebration, when Halloween tables proudly showcased a cake that captured the night's mysterious glow and the joyful indulgence of the holiday season. Spiced pear and gingerbread trifle once turned ordinary autumn evenings into church social celebrations that lingered in memory long after the candles burned out. Cooks stewed ripe pears with brown sugar and a touch of cinnamon until tender and fragrant. Molasses-rich gingerbread was baked until dark and slightly sticky, then cut into soft cubes. In large glass bowls, the layers alternated, fruit soaking into cake while whipped cream crowned the top in soft white peaks. Each spoonful offered spice, sweetness, and a mellow warmth that matched the rustle of fallen leaves outside. Children admired the trifle's stripes of brown and gold, while adults savored the gentle heat of ginger against the cool cream. Served at 1960s church gatherings or family Halloween suppers, it became a signature dish of the season. Over time, quick puddings and store-bought desserts replaced the careful layering, and the recipe faded from regular rotation. Those who once helped build the trifle remember the scent of pears and ginger filling the room like a promise of comfort and community on chilly October nights. Molasses crinkle cookies filled kitchens with the rich aroma of spice and dark sugar as trick-or-treaters knocked at the door. Butter, brown sugar, and blackstrap molasses combined with ginger and cloves to create a dough deep in color and flavor. Rolled into small balls and coated in granulated sugar, each cookie cracked open as it baked, forming a delicate web of crevices that looked like tiny cobwebs. The crisp exterior yielded to a soft, chewy center that released a gentle heat of spice with every bite. Families stacked them high on platters for parties, their sparkling tops catching the flicker of jack-o'-lantern candles. Children loved watching the cracks appear through the oven window, a bit of kitchen magic that matched the holiday's playful spirit. Though modern sweets crowd store shelves, The memory of those warm cookies endures as a reminder of how a few simple ingredients once filled an entire house with comfort and a hint of mystery, perfect for a cool Halloween evening. Caraway seed. Candy drops offered a simple pleasure with a whisper of old-world herbal flavor that once soothed throats on chilly autumn nights. Sugar syrup boiled to the hard crack stage was scented with crushed caraway seeds, their warm licorice-like aroma drifting through the kitchen as the candy thickened. The mixture was poured onto greased marble slabs and cut into small, clear drops that gleamed like amber in the light of lanterns. Children carried them in paper cones during hay rides and Halloween gatherings, while adults appreciated the faint medicinal note that lingered after each bite. The candy's balance of sweetness and subtle spice reflected a time when home remedies and confections often shared the same recipe box. Over decades of industrial candy making, these humble drops fell from favor, yet their memory remains tied to nights around the hearth when neighbors traded stories and a handful of homemade caraway candy made the dark a little warmer and the laughter a little longer. Cider glazed popovers rose high and hollow in cast iron pans, a fragrant breakfast treat for families preparing for a long Halloween day. Batter of eggs, milk, and flour was poured into sizzling butter, creating crisp edges and airy centers that puffed dramatically in the oven's heat. Warm apple cider was simmered with brown sugar and a touch of cinnamon until it thickened into a glossy syrup. As the popovers emerged golden and steaming, they were brushed with the cider glaze that soaked into the crust and dripped down the sides in sticky ribbons. The first bite released a cloud of sweet apple-scented steam that mingled with the cool morning air. Parents served them with mugs of hot cider while children planned costumes beside the kitchen table. Over time, boxed mixes and quick breads replaced this delicate ritual, but the memory of crisp popovers brushed with cider still carries the flavor of a holiday morning when the house smelled of apples, spice, and the excitement of a night filled with lantern light and laughter. Pumpkin custard baked in mason jars turned a classic autumn dessert into a portable delight perfect for parties and school carnivals. Smooth pumpkin puree blended with cream, eggs, and warming spices was poured into individual jars and baked slowly until set. The glass vessels allowed each serving to be presented with a rustic charm while keeping the custard warm long after it left the oven. Children carried their own little jars to picnic tables, enjoying the silky custard with spoons that clinked softly against glass. A dollop of whipped cream and a sprinkle of nutmeg finished each portion, filling the air with the unmistakable scent of the season. Neighbors admired the clever presentation and often saved the jars for future gatherings, making the dessert both festive and practical. Though large pies now dominate holiday tables, the memory of these small custards endures as a reminder of a time when even simple desserts were crafted with care and designed to bring people together for Halloween nights filled with warmth and shared delight. Maple cream candy pumpkins brought the taste of New England forests to Halloween tables with hand-molded charm. Pure maple syrup was boiled down and beaten with cream until it thickened into a smooth fondant, rich with natural sweetness. Skilled hands shaped the warm mixture into tiny pumpkins, using toothpicks to press gentle grooves along the sides and adding a small clove or green candy stem for a final touch. Each piece hardened to a soft, creamy texture that melted instantly on the tongue, leaving the unmistakable flavor of pure maple lingering. These little confections decorated party trays and filled candy bowls during autumn gatherings, a perfect bite of forest harvest transformed into candy art. Children delighted in their delicate size and gentle sweetness, while adults admired the craftsmanship. With time, the patience needed to create them gave way to quicker store-bought sweets. But memories of maple cream pumpkins remain tied to crisp October evenings when families shaped sugary dough together and filled their homes with the warm scent of boiling sap and holiday anticipation. Ginger snap pumpkin roll combined the deep spice of old-fashioned gingerbread with the creamy smoothness of pumpkin for a dessert that looked as dramatic as it tasted. A thin sheet of ginger-spiced cake was baked until springy, then carefully rolled in a towel to cool, training it to hold its spiral. A filling of sweetened pumpkin cream cheese was spread across the unrolled cake before it was rolled once more into a perfect swirl of orange and brown. Each slice revealed a striking pattern that caught the eye beneath flickering candlelight. Guests admired the presentation before savoring the balance of sharp ginger and mellow pumpkin in every bite. Served at neighborhood Halloween parties and autumn potlucks, the roll became a conversation piece, as well as a treat. Although ready-made cakes have simplified holiday desserts, the careful craft of baking and rolling this vintage classic lingers in memory as a reminder of a time when homemade sweets doubled as works of art and centerpieces for gatherings of friends and family. Sweet potato marshmallow bars turned a humble root into a festive square loved by children and adults alike. Mashed sweet potatoes were blended with brown sugar, cinnamon, and a hint of vanilla before being spread into a baking pan. A generous layer of marshmallows was scattered across the top and broiled until the edges caramelized and the tops turned golden brown. The bars cooled just enough to cut into neat squares, each piece offering a creamy base and a gooey sweet topping. Served at Halloween bake sales and school parties, they combined the flavors of pie and candy in a single easy-to-carry treat. Parents appreciated how the nutritious sweet potato balanced the indulgent marshmallow, while children simply enjoyed the sticky pleasure of each bite. As candy dominated the holiday, these bars faded from memory, but those who once pulled a warm pan from the oven remember the fragrant spice and soft texture that made them a beloved tradition of autumn nights filled with laughter and candlelight. Chocolate-dipped dried apricots offered a simple elegance that stood out among more sugary Halloween candies. Plump dried apricots were gently warmed to bring out their natural sweetness, then dipped halfway into melted dark chocolate and placed on waxed paper to cool. The glossy coating hardened into a thin shell that contrasted beautifully with the chewy fruit inside. Hosts packaged them in small paper boxes tied with ribbons, gifting them to neighbors and party guests as a sign of autumn hospitality. The combination of tart fruit and rich chocolate satisfied even the most sophisticated palates while remaining easy enough for a home cook to master. Lantern light reflected off the shiny surface of the treats, making them as decorative as they were delicious. Over time, mass-produced chocolates crowded out this handmade delight, yet its memory lingers as a symbol of thoughtfulness and quiet style in a season often dominated by loud colors and overly sweet candies. It was a candy that celebrated restraint and the natural gifts of fruit and cocoa. Applejack Hot. Toddy warmed parents returning from chilly trick or treat rounds with a gentle heat that spread from the first sip. Strong apple brandy was combined with steaming water, a drizzle of honey, and a squeeze of lemon, creating a drink that smelled of orchards and autumn spice. Served in heavy mugs beside crackling fireplaces, it offered a calm contrast to the children's noisy excitement. The toddy's mellow sweetness and subtle bite relaxed tired adults, while the aroma of warm apples mingled with the scent of burning wood. Neighbors often gathered to share a pot, trading stories while the night deepened and the air grew cold. Over time, shifting tastes and stricter regulations around serving alcohol at neighborhood events made the Applejack Hot Toddy a rarity, but those who once enjoyed it recall the quiet comfort of that golden drink and the feeling of community it fostered on long October nights when lanterns flickered outside and autumn winds swept through the trees. Tomato aspic is a sort of Jell-O juice hybrid, and no, we're not even going to attempt to justify that one. Picture this: a squishy, gelatinous tomato mass on the plate, glistening as if it is ready for a 1960s cookbook. This dish was the crown jewel of Sunday supper tables for decades, and it came topped with the pièce de résistance, a nice big spoonful of mayonnaise. It wasn't just the texture of aspic that brought the dish to fame. It was a dish that said, "I know my way around a kitchen," because making one required skill. Tomato juice was mixed with gelatin and the right proportion of other ingredients such as Worcestershire sauce, onion, and celery. Once prepared, it was portioned like a cake and could be eaten as a first course or as an accompaniment. People loved to bring it to Sunday parties because it seemed very elegant and could be prepared in advance. But let's be real, its wobbling appeal was polarizing. You either thought it was the bomb.com because it was the perfect mix of sour and salty, or you were like, meh, I'll take the beans, please. Tomato aspic is now best known as a joke, but it was a popular dish when gelatin was the go-to ingredient in many recipes. Nostalgic or nightmarish? That's for you to decide. We're going to continue the casserole show with Alpine chicken. This one got popular for more or less the same reasons the other two did. However, it had an extra kick that they didn't, and that was the addition of Swiss cheese. Americans will never get tired of a dish if it has a decent helping of cheese in it. So you shouldn't be too surprised that this is stuck in the minds of eaters and families like glue. Alpine chicken typically uses cream of mushroom soup and breadcrumbs or a stuffing mix layered in a dish that gets cooked until the cheese is melted. You also have your typical chicken breasts involved, but some people go for the thighs. It peaked in popularity during the post-war era when people really started looking for more ease in their cooking rather than sweating buckets after a day in the kitchen. You know how when you cook something, you rarely feel like eating it immediately? It's because cooking is a soul-sucking endeavor. It doesn't have to be, thanks to things like crock pots and recipes like Alpine chicken, which bring the fun back in food and make sure you actually get to rest and replenish that stamina tank. Plus, this was a dish that really got the crowd singing, and that's always one you want to keep on your roster. Oxtail stew has a pretty celebrated and deep history, and I really want to take you through all of it. Globally, it's always been at the forefront of African, Caribbean, and Nigerian cultures. Oxtail itself refers to the tail of the cattle, which was one of the cheapest kinds of meat you could buy. It was typically always used for stews because of the amount of collagen in it. You'd slow cook this bad boy for hours until you got a dish that was literally bursting with flavor. Caribbean and West African cooking both have different takes on it that they've introduced into the wider scope of American food. Basically, during the Great Migration around the 20th century, lots of Africans started coming to bustling cities with traffic and waves of immigrants. That, of course, meant that there were loads of people who had to be cooked for now, and oxtail stew was a dish that understood that assignment better than anything else. It became extremely common for people to bring oxtail stew to the family potluck in the 1950s and even further, especially as it became a big part of soul food and Southern culture. Even today, it's a pretty well-known part of African American culture in America, and you'd be pretty hard-pressed to find someone who hasn't tried it. Stuffed peppers. Forget those boring pre-made things you see at the grocery store because stuffed peppers are here to save the day. We're talking about the beautiful bell peppers Grandma made on Thanksgiving. Vibrant red, yellow, or orange peppers are hand-picked and carefully hollowed out and then stuffed with a flavorful mixture of fluffy rice, seasoned ground meat, and your choice of chopped vegetables. Once stuffed, these peppers are baked to perfection until they are tender and crisp. Now, this isn't just a casual meal. Whipping up a stuffed pepper might make you feel like a master chef in the kitchen. It's also a great way to use up leftover rice and ground meat. Bonus points. If you use their visual appeal to trick your children into getting their daily dose of veggies. Yeah, the little ones don't really go for the green peppers on the table, but they might just love these stuffed peppers. You might even add some cheese to top it off. Unfortunately, it is one of those dishes that has faded from many dinner tables. If we take a look at how Porcupine meatballs made their claim to fame, then the answer is pretty easy, my friend. You take canned food, a sauce that gets simplified for everyday use, and budget-friendly, high-quality meatballs, and you have an easy winner in the eyes of the people. This dish costs nothing to make and requires the simplest of things from you. It's probably all stuff you already have in your home, to be honest. How often do we really find ourselves without any onions or rice? The sauce might be a bit tricky if you're new to it, but any canned tomato sauce would work too. All in all, it's extremely beginner-friendly. It caught on because between the casseroles, the meatloafs, and the pot roasts, people needed something different, but similar enough that it could work for them on a daily basis. What they ended up finding was porcupine meatballs, among many things, but the recipe is largely forgotten nowadays. You just don't get to see it being made much in households, probably because the prices are much higher than they used to be, and because there's been a massive rise in takeout culture on top of it all. Its golden days in the 1950s and 1970s are ancient history now. Continuing on our potato express train, we have mashed potatoes with sour cream and chives. Mashed potatoes had one problem that very few things, food or otherwise, in history do have, and that was suffering from success. It was too good, the flavor was too great, and it even looked delicious. Eventually, people started to get a little bored of having the same amazing flavor always and wanted to know what more they could do with it. Thus began a very long rabbit hole of adding random ingredients to mashed potatoes, which was a mixed bag, historically speaking. You had some absolute train wrecks, but among the heap, you would find gold like sour cream and chive mashed potatoes. Something that redefined what it meant to have a lazy Sunday or a movie night. Families adored this simple wonder. What it brought to the table was happiness for like $4.50. As America explored the rabbit hole even deeper, it would leave dishes like this behind, which sucks for us. Ham delights are a really popular appetizer. Now, American culture has always been built around sandwiches and baked goodies. Somewhere around the middle point of it, the trend of sliders also became pretty common. These were just small sandwiches that were made pretty typically, but were meant to be sort of a taste tester. Ham has been one of the most popular things to get in the US, especially around times like Christmas and Easter, so you can kind of see where this thing got its start from. It's even known as a ham and cheese slider in some parts of the country. The reason things like this got so popular was because while people were taking care of their main course needs with dishes like casseroles, they were left with nothing new to do when it came to sides. That's why ham delights became such a concept in potlucks, because they were the perfect warm-up before you started getting into the real food, the one that'd leave you in a coma, unable to get out of bed or respond to a call. This is probably the best proof of how stress-free a crock pot can be. When your cooking gets so simple that your dish gets called no-peak chicken because you literally don't need to even glance at it, you know you need to invest in one of these bad boys. This dish takes chicken breasts and works some real magic with them, but the real star of this show is the canned products. Canned mushrooms and soups are put into a dish with a broth, then covered with foil and baked. The rice absorbs all the liquid, and the chicken soaks in that lovely flavor. It gets really mushy in the process, and that means it's perfect for you to sink your teeth into after a long day. It got popular because it was one of those dump and bake recipes. It took nothing. You wouldn't work up a sweat making it, and everything you needed for it was available at your nearest convenience store. Casserole culture in general started skyrocketing from the 1950s to the 1980s, and this was one of the staples of that time. It's a win-win situation for everyone when your country's classics are made even easier and more accessible thanks to nifty new machines, and people definitely took as much advantage of that fact as they could. Pork cassoulet was what you went for as far as everyday meals go if you wanted to work some pork into the weekly diet. Pork cassoulet featured pork shoulders, or sausages in particular, and some of the typical ingredients you're used to seeing with savory dishes. Tomatoes, onions, garlic, all your usual suspects. Except this time it uses white beans like Great Northern beans. The reason you ended a crock pot, particularly for this, is that it is a stew, and the pork needs to be browned. Now you can include breadcrumbs for a crunch on top, but it kind of messes with the stew-centric vibe, so people used to leave them out. As far as the flavor goes, this is all savory, and it does not hide that fact from you at all. The slow cooking really lets everything combine into one massive profile that feels like it's made up of many different flavors, instead of a lot of tastes fighting for which one gets to stand out the most. When this was popular, pork was leagues more affordable than it is today, and the fact that you could either make this into a stew or a casserole meant that a lot of families found a lot of use for it. It fit the tastes of almost every prolific area in the country, like California, the Pacific, or the South, and it did great at keeping everyone full. The tasty meat pie isn't your average store-bought pie. We're talking about a savory masterpiece filled with delicious goodness. This used to be a classic at Thanksgiving and Christmas dinners back in the day before hash brown casseroles came to take the cake. But tasty meat pies had their own beauty. Imagine a flaky golden brown crust with a filling of seasoned ground meat, chopped vegetables like carrots and peas, and a rich, flavorful gravy. The origins of the meat pie have been traced back to the Neolithic period around 6000 BC. Yeah, even the Egyptians were a fan of this classic. It's perfect for a potluck, a family dinner, or even a cozy night in. The best part? Its portability. Just grab a slice and head out the door. It's the ultimate dinner on the go. Italian hot dishes, on the other hand, are a Minnesota classic. You couldn't go a day in the streets of the upper Midwest without being dazzled by all the different kinds of fragrances. By strong, alluring scents, I really just mean everyone's and their grandma's different takes on a hot dish. It was a tradition that came during the rise of casseroles in the 1950s, and it was something that became a pantry staple at one point. Casseroles were sort of the thing to eat back then because you could just get everything done with them. They became one of the most popular meals to make for home chefs because there wasn't a dinner where somebody would pout and go like, "Aw, casserole?" Even if it wasn't a lot each and every time, people still got visibly excited seeing mom pop out of the kitchen with some casserole. Italian hot dishes especially were something to celebrate because it meant she was really going all out for the occasion. Despite this dish not really having much Italian history, it caught the name because it uses a lot of Italian staples. You have your tomato sauces, your pasta, and of course the freshest kind of cheese you could find. If anything, it definitely has Italian stereotypes. Speaking of crispy, everybody knows breadcrumbs and meat go together, and nothing proves that like codfish cakes. A nice way to jazz up a home party or a cute snack to bake for your partner? You could really make codfish cake with any white-skinned fish. Adding breadcrumbs, spices, and mashed potatoes into the mix was a set of flavors that was not that flexible. Looking into ancient history such as the 1900s, we can find some pretty early references to crispy cod in cakes. There is your food history fact of the day. Cod made the idea click so good that people went crazy over them. Go out for a stroll in the 1900s, and you could easily find this at any joint around the corner or food stall. A perfect crisp with a tender inner and all the savory flavors you would want in a comfort food. Sadly, as far as fishes go, people are looking for different catches for their meals now. Rarely do the States and the United Kingdom get along on matters of food, but Welsh rarebit was an international peace treaty that was beloved by many people. Similar to garlic bread, Welsh rarebit was made out of bread which has long been a comfort food across Britain and America. The dish lacks meat, but do not be disheartened as the bread is topped with a cheddar cheese sauce made with various sauces and spices that make it taste otherworldly. Things like Worcestershire sauce and ale add a unique flair to this dish, and people could not deny the flavor. Yes, we all know the memes about British food being bland, but you all know how good American cheeses are, right? All treaties break, and this one did too, as it was not something people made much as burgers got more popular. At that point, people just thought, why not get a burger instead? One of the finest dishes we ever got as a result of the crock pot was the famous Amish 6-layer dinner. Just like Kentucky Fried Chicken gets a lot of attention for those infamous 13 secret ingredients, this dish too only has 6 ingredients that make up all the magic. You have your onions, ground beef, carrots, tomatoes, and then a layer of seasoning and broth. You layer this up in a casserole dish, bake it until the vegetables are the definition of soft and tender, and enjoy the healthiest and tastiest casserole you've ever had. Simple does it, right? That advice has carried kings to their empires, and it'll carry you to a wonderful dinner if you take it. You don't need to pre-cook anything, as everything goes into one casserole. This dish gets the Amish association because, as you may have guessed, it got pretty popular in those communities and places with farming traditions. More people started adopting it when people had an interest in the many cuisines that different communities in America had, like the Amish and Midwestern traditions. The era where this dish got popular, the 1950s to 1970s, was a time marked by an increasing population and birth rate. People had larger families, and cheap, affordable ways to feed everyone were immediate hits with the masses. The Hungarians really killed it with dinners that shaped our childhood, because we've got another banger on the list. Hungarian goulash was everyone's favorite cozy, hearty meal back in the day. Goulash is a hearty stew whipped up with tender chunks of beef simmered in a rich, savory sauce brimming with paprika. Yeah, paprika was huge back in the day. So why did this delicious dinner vanish from our dinner tables? Well, the Hungarian goulash traces back as far as the 10th century to stews eaten by the shepherds, so you can say this one might just have run its course. But hey, if you're ever craving goulash, dust off some old cookbooks and get to work because it really isn't hard to wump up. This is the perfect dish for a chilly night in, curled up on the couch with a good movie. Just be careful not to spill it on your mom's vintage tablecloth. Those things are irreplaceable. It's a quiet Sunday at the dinner table and you're ready to dig into a plate of golden brown codfish cakes with creamy peas. This meal wasn't just a dish back in the day. It was a solution to tough times. Codfish cakes, made with salted cod, mashed potatoes, and a little seasoning, were a frugal way to turn pantry staples into something special. The creamy peas, a luxury addition that made you forget you were eating on a budget. The real MVP of this recipe was salted cod, which could sit in the pantry forever and still come to life with a good soak. The cakes were fried up crispy on the outside and soft on the inside, like edible comfort. Real quick, if you're loving this content as much as we loved making it, hit subscribe to stay connected and help us reach even more amazing folks like you. On the other hand, creamed peas made a basic veggie rich and buttery. They balanced each other out like the perfect culinary couple. This isn't a meal that gets lost in the shuffle. And it's the kind of dish that makes you want to call your grandparents and ask for their secret recipe, then spend the evening wondering how a simple can of peas and some codfish could taste so good. Let's dial it down a bit with some potato dumplings, which we are 90% sure you will love at first sight. There might be a few people who disagree because everyone has their opinions, and using potatoes in dumplings is not exactly normal. When the first wave of German Americans who brought along potato dumplings with them, they were an instant success in the States. Don't you just love it when cultural exchanges like this happen and make the world a tastier place to be? Potato dumplings are just your typical dumplings filled inside with potatoes. You will notice that the best ideas on this list are the ones who are simple enough to appeal to everyone. Maybe that is what comfort food should be? At least potato dumplings fit a lot of people's idea of what comfort eating is. It leaves a little tear in your heart to see this vanish from most houses and dumpling places now. Ewing Steele's orange rolls are a wholesome little pit stop in Southern and Midwestern cooking. They're fluffy, sweet, and just about the opposite of everything you've come to expect so far on this list. The dish itself refers to a pretty specific variant that got popular throughout the South. Ewing Steele himself is known for making these. I mean, it's in the name. But the rolls themselves represented a lot. They had typical American baking traditions such as puff pastries and buttery rolls, but they mixed that in with oranges, sweet tastes, and really comforting textures. That was common in Southern desserts, so it was a blend of both points of American cooking. Now, while people believe that Ewing Steele made it, they aren't sure, because there's no documented recipe or cookbook that shows us a process of him developing the dish. All we know is that it first popped up in the South, and then it popped up at everyone's potlucks. Those bright citrus flavors were the perfect thing to bring to a potluck. This dish actually got popular for exactly the reasons you would think. Yes, landing your man through a happy stomach is a good way to get married by fall season. Land your man, baked beans suddenly are a tried and tested method. I mean, you don't get a moniker like that for nothing, right? These typically get served as a topping for bratwurst or hot dogs, or served as a side for a main event that lies more on the barbecue side. The beans are made with ground beef, onions, and bell peppers, so they definitely are the perfect side to any kind of savory or tangy experience. One of the best sauces to use was Texas Pete sauce, but any kind of Tabasco works. If you have hardwood smoked bacon, though, that's definitely what cookbooks recommend, along with Taco Bell seasoning. As far as beans, any kind of canned beans work, but if you're looking for a specific recommendation that really encapsulates that mid-1900s flavor profile, then you should go for Bush's original baked beans. Either way, you're in for a great time with these. Try making them for a special someone on a romantic evening, and maybe you might get lucky in other ways too. If you do hear wedding bells because of this dish, know you did a great job. When the first wave of German Americans who brought along potato dumplings with them, they were an instant success in the States. Don't you just love it when cultural exchanges like this happen and make the world a tastier place to be? Potato dumplings are just your typical dumplings filled inside with potatoes. You will notice that the best ideas on this list are the ones who are simple enough to appeal to everyone. Maybe that is what comfort food should be? At least potato dumplings fit a lot of people's idea of what comfort eating is. It leaves a little tear in your heart to see this vanish from most houses and dumpling places now. Biscuits and sausage gravy. Okay. This southern staple might still be a thing in some parts of the country, but let's be real, biscuits and sausage gravy is definitely not dominating breakfast menus anymore. I guess waffles are to blame for that. But this breakfast legend is the perfect combination of fluffy buttermilk biscuits so light and airy they practically melt in your mouth, along with a creamy sausage gravy, rich with savory sausage and speckled with black pepper. This is a breakfast, or hey, no judgment here, even a dinner combination that's pure comfort food heaven. From the perfect hangover cure to a delicious weekend treat, biscuits and sausage gravy satisfy all cravings. Just maybe lay off the white clothes while you're indulging. That sausage gravy can be a bit enthusiastic when it comes to staining. Spanakopita, on the other hand, is a traditionally Greek dish. This is a savory pie, and it makes a lot of use of some ingredients you don't typically see as the main stars of the show in America. You have parsley, dill, and spinach as far as herbs and greens go, and feta cheese. Top it off with some caramelized onions, and you're good to go. By far, though, the most interesting thing people use here is phyllo dough. This dough was pretty much the trademark of the pie itself in Greece. It gave the pie a really unique and buttery taste that made it stand out in comparison to the fluffier, heavier doughs that people were using at the time. Traditional pizza dough, for example, was a lot less delicate. You could say that people began to think of fusing spanakopita, which was a really niche dish, by the way, with pizza thanks to the fusion food trends that were going around back then. I think this comes from Mediterranean cuisine, since it has a lot of those flavors. The flaky dough and the use of olive oil to butter it make this a much more interesting pizza than what you would typically expect. Next up, we have the shipwreck casserole. If you think this name's creative, keep watching, because some of these casserole names will leave you scratching your head. So, the shipwreck casserole was a go-to for families during tough economic times because it was simple, budget-friendly, and made with ingredients that were often already on hand. The name shipwreck referred to the hodgepodge of ingredients tossed together as if it were a shipwreck of a meal. Grandma's pantry was almost always stocked, but during the hard times, even she had to make do with whatever was available. This delicious casserole was versatile and typically consisted of ground beef, potatoes, onions, and canned tomatoes, with the occasional addition of baked beans or vegetables like carrots and green beans. Forget maritime memories and bowls of dumplings or potatoes, let's talk about stuffed cabbage rolls. Cooking cabbage was something that was not so popular down in the South, but more so on the West Coast. People would take these cooked cabbage leaves and wrap them around every kind of filling you could imagine: ham, chicken, beef, or bacon, and even cheese. Maybe some of you might agree that America does not know when to leave things alone. Usually very popular as a health-friendly dish that also gave you protein and taste, it was really common for houses to make this for an afternoon lunch. Cooking the cabbage gave it an even crispier texture too, so that always helped matters with American taste buds. Unfortunately, it would not have much of a presence except its local one, and eventually even that faded away when people got less green-savvy with their food. Scalloped chicken casserole. Here's another classic casserole that deserves a comeback. This dish is the perfect example of simple but mouth-watering good. I mean, just imagine tender chicken pieces in a creamy sauce, seasoned to perfection, and layered with fluffy breadcrumbs. I think I'm feeling hungry now. Scalloped chicken casserole is a great way to use up leftover chicken, and it's perfect for a quick and easy weeknight meal. Not to mention, it's a dish that's sure to please even the pickiest eaters. Who can resist creamy chicken and crispy breadcrumbs? Ditch your takeout menus for a night and take a trip down memory lane by giving this casserole a try. You can find dozens of recipes on the internet, and it won't take you hours to whip up. Trust me, your taste buds will thank you. Sauerkraut is one of the most famous examples of Germans and Americans finding a perfect middle ground. It's one of those marriages of culture, flavors, and taste palettes that just manages to work for almost everyone. Back in the day, it was one of the biggest must-haves at potlucks, and regions with a strong European presence or active German communities couldn't get enough of it. Sauerkraut was known for two things. It was a roller coaster of different kinds of meats, cheeses, and potatoes. 2, It was filling, more than anything you could put in front of it for comparison. Two people on their own just weren't ever able to complete this casserole on their own. Lots of people think that it became such a crowd pleaser because of its roots as a dish made in rural areas. It was pretty much built to survive harsh winters. There's also the way it's really affordable. It takes basic things and simple crops to make one really good casserole that you can pretty much make whenever you would like. You can prepare the dish and put it in the fridge. You could transport that to wherever you're going, take it along with you and bake it there. You could also just bake it later, whenever you feel comfortable enough to. For lots of utility reasons, as well as a flavor profile you wouldn't find anywhere else, this German dish really made a name for itself here. Tell us which forgotten Halloween treat you would revive. Like this video if the memories made you hungry, and subscribe to keep these spooky flavors alive.